It's already 3 o'clock, and let me know, Sukanya, when to start.
We can start now.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I welcome everyone for this today's webinar on how to reduce CO2 emission from coal-based thermal power plant. As it is happening for last many years, whenever December comes, the whole world start talking about climate change. UN has just released their report, which says we will not be able to cap global warming at 1.5 degrees centigrade or 2 degrees centigrade. Now, this is serious. Our environment minister also gave a statement few days back. India is the only G20 nation to be in compliance with Paris Agreement on climate change. He further added, India is presently contributing only 6.8% of global emission, and we have achieved our target. However, this morning, when I was going through the NDC target of India, I found we have committed sector-wise target. But what we listen everywhere is about only renewable energy. Other sectors are just ignored in spite of the fact that they have potential to spoil all the effort which we have achieved in the renewable sector. It is with this reason we have planned for today's webinar on reducing GHG emission from coal-based power station in the country. Center for Science and Environment has released this report on 21st of October. And now we are having a stakeholder conference to get feedback from various stakeholders on how to achieve the policy program which CSE have suggested. For today's program, I have got my colleague Vinay Trivedi, who has been working in this sector for last 5 years. I also have Mr. Toby Lockwood. He is a senior analyst at International Energy Agency, specializing in carbon capture and storage, high efficiency, low emission coal power technologies. We also have Mr. Subrata Chakravarti. He is a senior manager with the climate program at WRI India. He is involved in various research based on the thematic area of informing the next round of NDC long-term strategies and electric mobility. He works extensively on technical review of GHG estimate and methodologies for key economic sector. We also have Mr. Prabodha Acharya. He was appointed as the Group Chief Sustainability Officer at JSW Group from September 2019. He is having 3 decades of working experience in the field of corporate sustainability, environmental management, emission reduction, climate change, corporate strategy, and policy development. Unfortunately, Ms. Seema Saxena from Central Electricity Authority is not able to join because of some personal reason, but no issue. Now we will have some more time for our panelists. Before I invite Vinay to share his presentation, I just want to share 2 slides. Vinay, can you share the presentation? Just 2 slides from my side. Yeah. Now, why we are discussing coal? Coal use and the world dependence on it for powering its energy need is major contributor to climate change. It's not a hidden fact. Everyone knows about it. Coal use in power plant and its use in millions of industrial boiler is major contributor to toxic air pollution. It is clear that use of energy must be eliminated immediately in the industrialized world, where it still continues to be used and phased out in our part of the world. And there is no question about it. Next slide. But we need an energy transformation. We need clean energy for co-benefit of local and global emission. Everybody knows climate change is not a local phenomenon. It has impact both at the local level as well as at the global level. Also, we need the right to energy for all, as energy poverty and inequity is not acceptable. We cannot have a world of haves and haves not when it comes to energy sourcing. Now it requires affordable source of energy. Now, given this imperative, this is CSE position. First is thermal power plant need to meet the 2015 emission standard. The standard came in 2015. Time was given till 2017. Now it has been extended to 2022. There is a request from many players to extend this deadline, but CSE position is very clear. Thermal power plant must meet the 2022 deadline. Next, use a first run strategy to incentivize clean coal power. We also released a report on October 21st, which is available on our website, that is called First Run, where we have talked about an instrument to incentivize power plant which are producing clean energy and penalize power plant which are reluctant to meet the emission norm. Ban or switch use of coal in individual boiler, move to gas or electricity. Ramp up the RE target not just for the grid-based energy but also for decentralized sources. Now, given that current coal power plants are already working far below capacity, what you call as PLF, and are expected to be curtailed even further because of increased installation of renewable energy, CSE says, do not invest in new coal power plant. Need to stay like this. But even all this is done, we have to recognize that coal is still part of India's power need in the coming decade. So, what we can do to ensure that it can be more efficient and reduce GHG emission. With this perspective, that how in the coming next decade, thermal power plant can be made more efficient and reduce their GHG emission, we are hosting this webinar. Now I invite my colleague, Vinay, to take it further. Vinay, please.
Thank you, sir, for briefly describing why we need to reduce our CO2 footprint in our coal-based power plant. I will quickly go through the summary and key findings of our report. So, as we know, the coal power plant has played a crucial role in providing energy security to the country. But with that, the associated CO2 emissions have also almost doubled during the period of 2005 to 15. And it is around 1,000 million tons. And when we see our total GHG emissions, which as per MOFCC stands at 2006 estimates, it is more than 3,000 million tons, we can easily see coal alone contributes around 1/3 of India's total GHG emission. This is massive. When we look in terms of fuel-related CO2 emissions, coal power alone contribute 50% of CO2 emissions. So in terms of contribution of coal-based power, we have massive opportunity to decarbonize. But is it possible? We will see in the coming slides. So we have taken aggressive renewable energy target, and we can see we are going to expand our capacity of renewable in solar and wind. But even with the expanded capacity, when we see the generation, coal is going to remain the king because it is going to contribute 50% of our generation, which makes it crucial that we need to decarbonize our coal sector itself. And how we should do that? What policy we need? So before going on to the policy, first we need to understand our fleet profile. So our fleet profile is young. Around 64% of the capacity is less than 10-year-old, which means that we are going to operate this capacity for next 50 to 20 years. So we need to operate it efficiently. And we also have an older capacity, which we need to retire immediately. And we have calculated baseline emission, and to reduce from this baseline emission, we have discussed the decarbonization policy for this sector. So we have clubbed upon the following policy, which we will go one by one, and what impact they can play in decarbonizing the coal sector. So when we understand the fleet technology, we can see when we move from subcritical to advanced ultra supercritical technology, our efficiency increases and our corresponding CO2 emission reduces, and it can reduce by almost 30%. So when we see India's fleet technology, we can see we are mostly subcritical, 73% subcritical, and less than 1/3 is supercritical. And what we have experienced with the supercritical capacity addition, our efficiency has risen. And what, as a thumb rule, we know that 1% increase in efficiency can decrease CO2 emissions by 2 to 3%. So what we need for the upcoming fleet, which is we are going to install in near future, we need to go for ultra and more, because we have time, because we are now installing capacity slowly, and we are also retiring old plants, but we need to build our capacity during this time to build ultra critical capacity and more advanced coal technology. And benefit we will get, because cost increase is marginal, but the benefit we will achieve in terms of resource efficiency and emission will accrue over the years. When we see India's plan for coal capacity in 2015, CA identified 34 gigawatt of the capacity to be retired. And when CSE in 2016 analyzed it, we found that 60% of it was highly inefficient, which has an efficiency of less than 33%, which means its CO2 emissions are 50 to 20% higher than the new fleet. And when we see our retirement, we are annually retiring only 2 to 3 gigawatt, which means we are not able to meet the target of retirement. And we are setting up new target for the retirement. So what we have understand that retiring old fleet is slightly difficult, because retiring a plant has a coal linkages, it has employee, it has land, and most importantly, the environmental clearances, which is difficult to get for the new plants. But so in this condition, we have to be creative in our strategy. We need to retire old plants which are most polluting and most inefficient. We need to retire them immediately, but we also need to refurbish some of the old plants to the biomass co-firing and other fuels so that we can operate it with a cleaner fuel. Government of India Renovation and Modernization Policy has recently updated and has given due consideration. What we have already highlighted, that we have young fleet and we need to improve its efficiency, and even with the minor modification, we can update and we can improve the efficiency. But with that, we have also have the challenge which we have highlighted, that with the growing renewable energy, the plant are going to operate at the part load, which will impact efficiency. In such case, renovation and modernization policy has to play a key role in bringing automation and managing and maintaining the efficiency of the existing power plants. And now the new points of biomass co-firing support has also added in the policy. We believe it can play a major role in bringing biomass co-firing in Indian plants. Moving on, one of the most important strategy, that is biomass co-firing, which has accepted global acceptance for cost-effective. It is a cost-effective method for decarbonizing the coal sector. And with looking at the perspective of India, we see which has abundant agro-residue available. Biomass co-firing can provide multiple benefits, which is it can eliminate stubble burning, it can replace coal, and it can also improve farmer income by adding economic value to the agricultural waste. And already more than 230 power plants are operating and utilizing biomass co-firing technology. Understanding that CA has already issued advisory for 5 to 10% co-firing biomass pellet made from agro-residue, and NTPC has already demonstrated 7 to 10% blend of biomass co-firing. But since only one plant is operating, we need to give a greater push to biomass co-firing in Indian coal-based power plant to achieve a higher decarbonization in the coming years. Carbon capture and storage brought a lot of hope at the start of this decade, but like standing at the end of this decade, we can say global progress on CCS has been poor. And many nations have not accepted CCS as a promising technology. It is because only 10% of the expected capacity has come, and very few plants are operational. That are around 19 plants are operational, and only two are coal-based power plant. So looking at the global perspective, the future of CCS is also not promising in the Indian context till 2030. But in that case, we also need to invest our in-house research and development to reduce the CCS cost. NTPC has initiated pilot project, but we believe more power plant need to come and need to do more indigenous work to reduce the cost of CCS in the Indian context. As we know, Indian coal has low calorific value, high ash content, and because of that, it affects efficiency and operation. And it is found that if by reducing ash content from 42% to 34%, we can reduce CO2 emission by 2 to 3%. Understanding this, MOFCC actually notified that we should the use of coal not more than ash content of 34%, and extended the rule in 2014 to more plants. But however, in 2020, we backtracked and we allowed the use of coal irrespective of ash content. And so we believe we missed this opportunity. It could have helped, because if we are bringing more efficient technology, a better coal would definitely going to help in the future. And while clubbing and other incentive and mechanism, carbon tax and carbon trading mechanism has globally accepted in the wider spread, and countries are opting for carbon tax, carbon trading, or both according to their needs. And when we look in terms of Indian perspective, we have carbon tax, which we increased from 50 rupee per ton to 400 rupee per ton. But now it is changed from clean energy tax to GST compensation tax. So it is not clear that how we are utilizing it for cleaning the coal sector. But with carbon tax, we believe we should bring carbon trading, and what we have experienced from the global ETS scheme, that an ETS scheme need time to get mature and actually get result on field. And China, which recently introduced its ETS scheme, actually initiated pilot in 2014. So we need to start now if we want to get the benefit by 2030. Clubbing on the other scheme, which is that we need to be transparent in disclosing heat rates. We need to set stringent target for PET, because PET scheme has not provided as much as benefit it could provide. And with the help, and we need with the merit order operation, all these things need to club together to add on to incentivize and push the other policies. So if we see in overall context, whatever the strategy we have discussed, we see even with the increased coal generation in the coming years, our capacity will increase from 205 gigawatt to 266 gigawatt. With the help of best case scenario policy, where we are opting for ultra supercritical technology and more, we are retiring as per plan. We are utilizing biomass co-firing and in maximum capacity. We are using renovation and modernization for improving our efficiency, and carbon tax and trading mechanism to club together and push all these policy to actually happen on the ground. So clubbing all these effects, we have estimated that we can reduce CO2 emission as much as 20 to 20% from our existing baseline emissions. And with that, by reducing CO2 emission, we are, as per the Indian context, we are not only going to reduce CO2 from this massive sector which contribute a lot, but in terms of resource efficiency, we are also going to reduce a great amount of pollution from our environment. Thank you from my side. Over to you, sir. Sir, you are mute.
Sorry. Vinay has shared some interesting policy guideline on how to decarbonize the coal power sector in the country. He has talked about fleet technology, their age, their efficiency, plans for the old thermal power plant, renovation and modernization, biomass co-firing, coal beneficiation, and some other techniques like emission trading scheme. We will discuss more. Now, next, I would like to have Toby. I want Toby first to give his feedback on CSE's report and his global experience on how other countries are working on to reduce GHG emission from coal-based thermal power plant. It's over to you, Toby.
Hi, thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and thank you to CSE for inviting me to join this very interesting panel. First, I'd like to say the IA Clean Coal Centre is really grateful to have CSE as one of our knowledge partners, and I think we've had some really fruitful exchanges of expertise over the last year in particular, but also going back many years. So we think this latest report on reducing the carbon footprint of India's coal power sector is a really excellent piece of work. It's been welcomed by me and my colleagues. It's already proving a valuable resource for our work in India. Lots of good analysis. Of course, India has the largest, will soon have the second largest coal power capacity in the world, and also has this relatively high proportion of older and less efficient units. So it's becoming a major focus for all of us working to promote cleaner coal technologies. And as Vinay's outlined, over the last decades, rapid coal power deployment means that India has addressed its long-term problems with the shortage of generating capacity. So we're now in a situation of overcapacity, at least in the short term. And at the same time, these ambitious deployment targets for renewables are limiting the future outlook. So it's really a good time for us all to look at how we can make the fleet as clean as possible. And it's not so much about quantity now as quality. So I think the report really clearly lays out some of the technology and policy options which are available to decarbonize India's coal. As Vinay said, fundamentally there's two routes. We can accelerate the retirement of inefficient units and replace them with state-of-the-art technologies like ultra-supercritical units. And the second option is we can upgrade the units we have through turbine retrofits and this kind of approach. And India's already really pursuing both these pathways to some extent, but we must see an acceleration. And I think it's instructive to look at how these pathways are being pursued in other parts of the world. China is often used as an example of somewhere where the efficiency of the coal fleet was increased really at the same time as in parallel with the period of a very rapid growth in coal in China at the in the first part of this, the first decade of this century. So I think it is important to ensure there is a business case for new efficient capacity, as this sector is really struggling at the moment. The power sector is struggling at the moment in India, but I think if there's a program to really accelerate the retirement of older units reaching 25 years of age, then you can maybe, and also that will accelerate the demand for new efficient capacity or improve the outlook. At the same time, as Vinay said, there's lots of barriers to building new efficient plants in terms of coal linkages, regulations, availability of financing. So I think that retirement and replacement process needs to be eased as it was in China. And at the same time, we need to look at the existing fleet. I think the PAT scheme that Vinay mentioned is really important, but that needs to obviously be given more ambitious targets, based more on on global standards of what can be achieved with various technology types, really geared towards incentivizing plant upgrades of the kind which can reach maybe 4 or 5 percentage points increases. India should look at efficiency standards of the kind that exist around the world, places like Japan and China, where there's a minimum efficiency that new and existing plants have to fulfill. So I'll quickly say, quickly mention biomass. I think this is a really important area. We've also been working on biomass co-firing at the IEA Clean Coal Centre for many years, and have lots of good resources on this. Again, there's a lot of experience of biomass co-firing in Europe, where it's really was a transition in many places towards a phase out of coal, but in some places towards 100% biomass co-firing. But as a first step, I think it's really good that India is looking at co-firing small ratios of biomass, which can be done with minimal capital investment, around 5 to 10%. It's more challenging with the kind of agricultural waste that India is looking at, but this has been done large scale again in China, and has the complementarity of reducing agricultural emissions. Lastly, carbon capture and storage is my own area of expertise. Just to finish, I would like to say that maybe the outlook for this sector globally is not as pessimistic as it may look from experience over the last 10 years. I think CCS went through really a tough period around the middle part of the last decade, but it's now kind of bouncing back in America and in several European countries, and also even in China. The announcement of the net zero target earlier this year, I think, is really a signal that China will start looking more seriously at, it will have to start looking more seriously at CCS for coal power. And I think India, is in a position to bide its time and draw on international experience, but it will need, there's things that India needs to be doing now with respect to carbon capture, and that's characterizing geological storage capacity and making sure that any new coal plants built are compatible with carbon capture retrofit in future. So I think that's definitely something that should still be on the table. And with that, I think I'll use my time and I'll pass back to the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Toby. Now, there are two very good inputs from your side, especially on the use of biomass. We have got a few questions from participants for you, but we will take it later on. Now, next we have Mr. Subrata Chakravarti. Again, Mr. Subrata, first I would like to request you to provide your feedback on CSE report and also share your viewpoint why setting ambitious target for reducing CO2 footprint of coal power plant is necessary. Over to you, Subrata.
Thank you. Thank you, Nivit. Let me start. Let me start by congratulating Vinay and CSC team on coming up with this report at a very opportune time. We have recently concluded uh, World Summit 2020. Some of the major economies have announced climate neutrality target. You might have heard in the news, China is making news nowadays. As far as the report is concerned, it's a very important report, and like you mentioned, and like Vinay also mentioned, we cannot probably do away from the requirement of the base load power in the near term future. Some of the findings that I find really interesting is when you talk about shifting of old coal fired power plants and replacing them with biomass or probably waste to energy plants. And this is a really interesting observation because uh, there has been some sort of announcement, if I'm not wrong, by Honorable Finance Minister during the budget speech, which basically talks about the inefficient coal-fired power plants. So it's a very interesting observation. What additionally need to be done is there has to be some sort of plan on the availability of the biomass, because majority of the time what we have seen is the availability of the biomass is always one of the dampening factor in scaling up of biomass project. Same is the case with the waste to energy projects as well. In Delhi, in the Gazipur area, people were trying to, and there were companies who were trying to operate waste to energy projects, but it didn't really materialize. I also am aware of one of the projects in the Hyderabad, which was also trying to operate a waste to energy project, but it was taking a humongous amount of time just to figure out the economics associated with it. CCS is yet to mature. I understand that, specifically in Indian context. So I guess it will be a wait and watch game. But we can definitely capitalize on the learnings from the Europeans and the US markets. Carbon pricing, well, again, a very potential policy tool. There are some Indian companies who are taking internal carbon price to an average of, if I'm not wrong, $25 per tons of CO2, as per CDP's latest released handbook report. So there are certain interesting observations, but I would like to sort of delve into a much more important aspect, and this is something which is not been talked about a lot. So most of the India's thermal power station use fresh water for cooling, and we have done some sort of research using our tool Aqueduct to find what are the issues associated with it. And our research finds that growing water scarcity forced 14 out of 20's countries' 20's largest thermal utilities to shut down at least once between 2013 and 2016, and that basically caused a whooping 1.4 billion US dollar in revenue loss and potentially hindering the return to the investors. It might also be very interesting for you to know that roughly 40% of India's thermal power plants are located in highly water stressed area. The result shows that large range of water risk exposure for India's top thermal power utilities, and it's going to worsen in coming time, because projection shows that 70% of India's power plant will face high water stress by 2030 due to climate change and increased water demand. But there are ways to reduce it also, and by this I am coming to the efficiency part of our discussion. One way to do is upgrading the cooling system. The most common cooling technology advancement could include replacing one screw with circulating cooling technology or adopting dry or hybrid cooling in high water stress regions. Second is obviously related to improving the plant efficiency. Now, improving plant efficiency can indirectly reduce the water withdrawal and consumption intensity. The most efficient a plant is, the more electricity it can generate using the same amount of cooling water. So, generator replacement and heat transfer coating are two examples that I can think of which could bring about immediate, efficiency improvement, and that can increase, kilowatt hour per cubic liter of cooling water. So these are the immediate thing that I could think of as far as the power plant efficiency is concerned. But having said that, and considering the current, climate diplomacy dynamics, if we are to imagine a 1.5-degree world in line with the ultimate objective of the Paris Agreement, then such interventions cannot be limited to just the, power sector or the coal sector. We need to have a plan to enhance the grid flexibility as well. And matching supply and the demand with efficient energy generation will require increasingly smart, digitalized, and flexible grid. So an integrated flexibility portfolio is required to avoid over-dependence on one option of generation only and to boost the grid resilience. The second thing, which also was talked about a lot nowadays, is we need a strategy to address the inefficient coal asset, including strategies for just transition. So this is something that, like I mentioned earlier, this is something which has featured in the budget speech as well in February 2020. One of the international examples that you might be aware of is the Germany, right? In Germany, government have agreed in early 2020 on a set of measures to phase out the coal by 2038 with additional cost, of course. But they have also taken into consideration as to how they're going to deal with the power generators, lignite-based power generators, and the people who are working in those plants. So we need to have a phase-out roadmap. So one of the strategies that one could think about is sequencing the phase-out. The age profile of the coal power plants differs greatly between the countries. Industrial countries typically built a large part of their power infrastructure before 1990. When we talk about the emerging countries, they are probably just 15 to 30 years. So profiling could be done, and on the basis of that, you can sequence out the phasing of the inefficient coal assets. Other factors to consider are obviously public health impacts associated with air pollution. We are all based in Delhi. We know the issue, and the water use is densely populated area. So realistic sequence of the power plant closure need to be addressed. Third is, and the final point that I want to make, is the integration of the sector coupling solutions. So finding synergies with the end use sector to enable steep cut in greenhouse gas emissions, probably through energy efficiency and electrification, is what our research shows that will close the decarbonization gap. Enhanced energy efficiency is critical. Otherwise, power system become an exercise of trying to cater to inefficient demand. So an increasingly electric energy system will transform how the power sector and the demand interact. I'll stop here, and I look forward to questions and discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Subrata, for your interesting comment. I really like your idea on phasing out as well as on energy efficiency of appliances. Let's wait for some questions from our participant. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Prabodha Acharya, Chief Sustainability Officer, JSW. I will request you, Mr. Acharya, to provide your feedback on CSE recommendation on how to reduce GHG emission from coal-based power plant, and also provide little insight on what JSW is doing to decarbonize its coal sector. It's over to you, Mr. Acharya.
Thank you very much, Navit. Good afternoon to all. And first of all, let me thank CSC, specifically Navit and Binay, for inviting me to be part of this panel and discussions. Am I audible, Binay? Yeah, right. Thank you. With your permission, let me just speak fast, introduce who we are, what we are doing towards decarbonizations in our energy sector, and then our observations on the CAC report on which we are discussing. If that is okay, so just to state that JSW is a 12 billion group and is an integral part of OP Jindal Group, and we have always been a part of the major projects that have played a key role in India's growth story. So JSW is very much synonymous is growth of India, and we are ranked among India's top business houses. JSW's innovative and sustainable ideas cater to the core sector, that is steel, energy, cement, infrastructure, and paint. I need to bring this out because we are mostly dependent coal as an input in all the sectors in which we are working. Of course, I am the lone representative of the industry sector here, and I am representing JSW Energy. So JSW Energy, we have around 4.5 gigawatt of energy generation capacity. Currently, 30% coming from renewable and 70% is coming from thermal. But please note that before 6 years, we started with 260 megawatt capacity. Now we have grown to 4.5 or 4,559 megawatt, nearly 18 times capacity increase. And we have a plan to add another 12 gigawatt by 2030. But please note that we have decided not to venture into coal anymore, and we'll be focusing mostly this 12 gigawatt will come in next decade through renewable energy additions, capacity additions. Coming to our strategies, that what JSW sustainability is always at the core of part of our strategy, our values, and this becomes a fundamental foundation of all our activities. We always, and that is why we have committed that we will accelerate our transition towards renewable energy in this sector, in this decade. We have come out with a very bold statement, and we will be becoming net carbon neutral by 2050 in JSW Energy. And we are also subscribing to science-based target to achieve in our energy business. That's by 2050. But what we have done also is that we have set some target for this decade, that is in 2030. Specifically on climate change, we want to reduce our emissions by more than 50%, to increase our renewable energy to the 2/3, that is almost 67% of our total installed capacity in this decade, and reduce our energy intensity and auxiliary power consumption by more than 50%. This we have all publicly declared and available. I'm also happy to note Subrata brought a very important thing about water and the nexus between climate change and water, specifically in energy sector. When we are talking about thermal energy, water is a very important raw material for the production itself, besides coal, and that is where and rightly Subrata told that most of our energy sectors or projects are located in very highly stressed water areas. So we have to also remain focused towards that. In JSW Energy, we have taken a target to reduce our water intensity by 50% in next decade. And we are maintaining a zero discharge operations throughout our group in all business, including energy, that we'll like to continue with that status. Besides, we have declared some other related target. I will say, biodiversity is very important and closely related to climate change, and we intend to achieve a known net loss biodiversity in all our operating sites. Similarly, we have state targets for air emission reductions and waste management. Strategically, we are also using, because we talked about carbon pricing. So in JSW, all the business, including energy, we are using internal carbon pricing to drive a behavior, decarbonization plan and investment behavior throughout all our investment decisions. Although we are using this as a shadow price, that is to use as a risk assessment tool, but it is will be going ahead, it will be used as an internal tool to evaluate all the projects based on their carbon emitting potentials and not only about what is the economic benefit is going to give. That means any financial decisions or capex evaluations we will be doing, carbon price will be integral part of it. So that as a strategy we are trying to use. Coming to the question about readiness to the compliance, because that's, I think, Nivit, you stated in the opening statement about compliance to 2015 standard. See, we are having 3 thermal power stations operating in JSW Energy. One is at Vijayanagar around 860 megawatt capacity, Ratnagiri around 1200 megawatt capacity, and Barmer around 1080 megawatt capacity. So in Ratnagiri, way back in 2011, when there is no regulations, we have implemented FGD there, and we are fully compliant to the new regulations in all our operations. There are smaller units in Vijayanagar and Barmer, Vijayanagar specifically. There we have freezed everything because of the COVID. The implementations has a little delayed, but rest of the 2 smaller 300 megawatt units where FGD will be installed soon. It's all process done. So only the implementations got delayed because of the COVID. That's as far as our strategy implementations to our meeting regulatory conditions. And as a philosophy in JSW, actually, why we implemented FGD, even there was no regulations, or what we do in as a group, our philosophy is always go for best available technology, whether it is in steel business or in energy business or in cement business. We believe to go with the future so that we become future ready. So that has been always our policy, and that drives us. So we want to go beyond compliances. Now I'm coming to the last part of your question, Nivit, about our comment on your report. We believe the recommendations what you have provided in the report and your findings are very pragmatic towards attaining the overall objective of cleaner power roadmap for the nation. Because what we see is that how do we have a clean energy and whether we have a right framework. And specifically, we do fully agree that like us, there are some players who stand out by adopting the best available technology and they strive towards going beyond legal compliances. And I think they should be incentivized for the good work they are doing, and also they should be rewarded for the good things what they are doing. And similarly, there should be some penalty for non-complying units so that they are encouraged towards meeting those objectives to have a decarbonization in thermal power station. If you allow us, we also recommend that from the CSE, you should possibly advocate for higher penalty for non-compliance within the existing legal framework of CPCB and the Environment Protection Act. Accelerated decommissioning of the older and inefficient thermal power units, which was talked of by my previous speakers, and that should happen because that will possibly, help in decarbonizations. Third thing is that this sector in India possibly underutilized. We have overall lower PLF from the operations. And I think we should ensure that all our existing good quality assets, they are used optimally and delivered to the expectations so that we get high efficiency. We also need to possibly work on some reform towards the fuel security concerns, the financial health of the state discomes, although these are possibly beyond the scope of your report. But I thought, these are the things you can possibly push as an independent NGO and how we can strengthen the financial and insurance environment of the sectors. So that would be my stake. Thank you very much. I look forward to the discussions or any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Acharya. It was really very encouraging to hear the initiative which JSW is planning to take in next decade. Now we have very little time left and I will take only a few questions. Like the last question has been asked by Mr. Velayut Mohanan. He is asking to you, Mr. Acharya, with a noble vision on carbon emission, JSW with their standing, just 1 minute, should strongly represent to the government to remove the use of any as content coal. This is most important. Can you read the question, Mr. Acharya? You are mute. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, is it in chat function or it is in the question function?
Answer.
Okay, is it the question? I cannot see the question, but if I understand, you are asking me a question that should we from JSW as an operator go to the government and tell that the coal should not have any ask, or is that the question?
So only beneficiated coal should be used in the.
I think, yeah, I think that is why we need to look at. See, as a I'm talking as an operator, as a business person. What we like to see, we like to see that we are providing maximum benefit to all the stakeholders. And in any business, of course, the people who are controlling the finances becomes the important stakeholder. But what they look at you deliver more rupee per rupee. So if you use a better quality of coal and beneficiated coal, so your efficiency improves and you deliver better return on the investment. So that's a welcome step.
And, okay, thank you. There is one question from Mr. Ramesh Singh. He is saying timely change of filters in power plant and government must stop brick kilns from west to east in the northern part of India. We all know the problem of GHG in India, but we need energy and we also need bricks. Mr. Ramesh, this is the reason why we are holding this workshop. Right now, we have got something around 205 gigawatt of coal-based power plant, and it is supposed to increase to 266 gigawatt by 2030. And we are holding this webinar to know how this sector can grow efficiently and reduce their GHG footprint. And also when it comes to the brick kilns, Center for Science and Environment have worked a lot in this sector, and we have recommended zigzag technology for the brick kilns. It has happened in a very large scale at Delhi NCR, Bihar, as well as in most part of the Punjab. Please read some of the articles of CSE and you will know the status. Let me go to next question is for Vinay. Vinay?
Yes, sir.
Our senior colleague from CPCB has asked, why there is so much hue and cry on use of biomass when it is beneficial to the environment? Can you elaborate what are the environmental benefits of using biomass in thermal power plant and why there is so much hue and cry?
Yes, sir. So one thing that like CA itself has suggested that we can efficiently utilize 5 to 10% biomass, and it can amount to huge amount of coal replacement. And wherever the sufficient biomass is available, we can utilize it. Although it is right now, it is just an advisory, but in terms of benefit, we can see that definitely the stubble burning, we know the huge quantity of stubble being burned in northern part of India. We can reduce that pollution directly. We can, even with the use of biomass in coal power plant, we can reduce sulfur dioxide emission up to that level, whatever the quantity we are replacing. We can also reduce NOx emission. There are certain doubts on PM emissions, but with the ESP upgradation, we can also reduce that. But in terms of availability, yes, it is it's essential that power plant and the biomass availability figure should be available. And we found that some states are doing good in providing the biomass availability to the nearby industry by reporting what is the local use of biomass and how much it is available for bioenergy purposes. But in terms of utilization, we have seen that yes, NTPC has already done it and have tendered for 5 million tons of pellets. So we are hoping right now there is no progress, but in the near future, we believe that this technology is going to get attention. And even we have observed in the government discussion that government itself want that it can go even higher than 10%. Yes, there is some doubt about the biomass being burnt in terms of operational efficiency or in terms of some issue, because every agro biomass is different. But in terms of the rice paddy, people are already, stubble is already using it, and we can operate it efficiently if we co-fire at the minimum level.
Thank you. Now my next question is for Toby. Toby, are you there?
Yep.
Yeah. Mr. Subir Gupta has asked, is carbon capture, utilization and storage technology being considered for reducing CO2 emission from coal-based power plant?
Yes. So the main near-term opportunities for CCS in coal power at the moment are in the USA, where there's a few projects in the FEED stage which have been supported by supported to some extent by the government there. CCS is still, I would say, very much of interest in parts of Europe, but the focus has really shifted away from coal power. So yeah, it's really the US where we're seeing continued interest in CCS in coal, particularly. But of course, coal is really in decline in the US as well. So I think the future of coal power CCS must lie in China. As I mentioned in my talk, the net zero target set by China recently may spell the beginning of really renewed interest in large-scale deployment. So I think that's the space to watch. Thank you.
Okay. Now my next question is for Mr. Subrata. Subrata, Mr. Banerjee has asked, are the adopted new technologies invented mostly in abroad, or the firm itself are engaging in more and more R&D? Mr. Subrata.
Yes, I understood the question, but I guess this is something that will depend on the technological advancement itself.
Okay.
I cannot pinpoint on what particular technology Mr. Mishta is speaking about, but there has been from the current analysis that we are doing, which basically talks about the climate actions as well as some technological advancement that can be also included in the ongoing COVID-19 recovery stimulus packages. We have seen that there are very few countries who have invested in the R&D on the technological aspects. For example, Germany is obviously a shining example, but European Union has also sidelined somewhere around 37% of their total economic stimulus package value towards the climate action, which also involves R&D on the technological advancements. So that is my answer. But feel free to send in the questions, and it will be helpful if you be a little more specific as to which technology you are talking about.
Correct. Mr. JS Vyas has asked, SPCB must have issue-bound direction. SPCB must issue time-bound direction to our coal-based power plant to use the only treated sewage as the cooling water. What do you think, Mr. Acharya?
I think any form of water reuse should be welcome, whether it is sewage water or it is using sea water or it is treated water or using new technologies to reduce your water consumptions. For example, we are talking to some organizations, they have just developed a technology which we call vortex-based technology, and that will hugely reduce your water consumptions, and we were trying to implement that. So I think any form, it is to the benefit of the organization. Like as the industry, I told, I'll do everything possible to reduce my cost for operations, right? And after coal, water is the major raw material for power generation. So why should not I be interested? And the questions whether CPCB or SPCB should stipulate in the consent or not, and that's the legality. So I will not be able to comment on that. But irrespective whether there is a regulatory requirement or directive from the authority, I would anyway love to do anything what is possible to reduce my specific water consumption.
Thank you. And now we have already crossed 4 o'clock, and we have noted down all the questions, and we will be providing answer to all the questions. Before we finish this webinar, I would like to take the question of Mr. B.J. Prasad. He said, PM observation on 5th anniversary of Paris Declaration that India has achieved more than its target and has showed residents of Earth planet that India will do much more than committed. Any observation from CSE? Now, he is our Prime Minister. He must have more data than us. But what, as a research and advocacy organization, we want to say? As I said in the morning, at the start of this program, I said in the morning I was reading the NDC target of India given to UNCCC. There they have a section on clean coal policies. There they talked about all new large coal-based generating stations must have mandated to use the highly efficient supercritical technology. Renovation and modernization. About 144 old thermal power plants have been assigned mandatory target for improving energy efficiency. Coal beneficiation have been made mandatory. And most importantly, besides stringent emission standard being contemplated for thermal power plant would significantly reduce emission technologies for mitigation perspective. All these things looks very good when we read the India's commitment. But when we talk about commitment to all the clean coal policies, I think we have not achieved what India have promised to UNCCC as well as to this whole world. We want to be a global leader, and we also want our industry to provide global leadership. And with this, I want to close this webinar, and I would like to thank you all our participants and all our panelists for their deep insight on the subject. And we will be in touch regularly and discuss more on this topic. This is a topic we cannot ignore in the coming 10 to 20 years. And let's work together to make sure Indian thermal power plants are efficient and they reduce their GHG emission in next decade. Thank you very much. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Subrata. Thank you, Mr. Acharya. And thank you, Vinay. Thank you very much. And thank you so much.
Have a good day.